Rain streaked down the glass like liquid silver, tracing restless patterns over the city that never slept. Inside Veluto, a candlelit Italian restaurant tucked between two narrow Manhattan streets, laughter bubbled from a corner booth where three women leaned close over half-empty glasses of red wine. Emma Reyes wasn't the kind of woman who normally laughed this much. Her weeks were ruled by deadlines, budgets, and the quiet discipline of survival. But tonight, Friday night, she'd promised herself a pause, a small rebellion in lipstick and laughter. "Okay," Olivia said, tapping her phone against the rim of her glass, eyes bright. "New boss, day one. Give us details." Emma's shoulders tensed, then she smiled. "He's fine." "Fine?" Nora nearly choked. "Half the office is in cardiac arrest because of that man." "He's just a boss," Emma said, pretending to study the wine's reflection. But the memory of him that morning, sharp suit, loosened tie, eyes the color of dark glass, burned at the edge of her mind. She'd felt his presence before she'd even seen him, as if the room had shifted around invisible gravity. "He looks like trouble," Olivia teased. "The expensive kind." Emma laughed, shaking her head. "Come on, he's probably married. Guys like that always are." "Rumor says he's not," Nora countered. "Lorenzo De Luca, transferred from the West Coast. No social media, no press. Total mystery." "Of course you looked him up," Olivia said, grinning. "Obviously, it's research." Emma rolled her eyes, but her pulse quickened. The name sounded foreign, heavy. The kind of name whispered, not spoken. She tried to ignore the flicker of curiosity in her chest. The memory of his hand brushing the elevator button just inches from hers that morning. "Fine," Olivia pressed, leaning in. "If he asked you into his office for a private meeting, what would you do?" Emma's laugh came out softer than she meant. "I'd probably forget my own name before the meeting even started." The words hung in the air, bold and blushing at once. Then, silence. The kind that stretches, tilts the world on its axis. A shadow moved at the next table. Someone set down a crystal glass, and when Emma turned, heart slamming against her ribs, her breath caught. He was there, Lorenzo De Luca, her new boss. Sitting one table away, no tie tonight. The first two buttons of his shirt undone. Sleeves rolled, revealing veins like dark ink under bronze skin. His profile sharp as if carved in secret. And those eyes, impossible to mistake, met hers over the rim of his glass. He'd heard. He'd definitely heard. Olivia froze mid-sip. Nora mouthed, "Oh my God." Emma wished the floor would swallow her whole. The candle between them wavered, betraying her shaking hand. Lorenzo didn't smirk. He didn't look offended. Instead, a faint amusement curved his lips, like a secret kept just for him. He raised his glass slightly as if in silent toast. Emma tore her gaze away, heat flooding her neck. Her friends erupted in whispered chaos. "Do you think he—" "Yes." "Oh my God, Emma, he heard you." She forced a nervous laugh. Maybe he didn't, but the sound of his chair scraping against the marble floor said otherwise. He stood. Every pair of eyes followed him as he walked past their table, his steps unhurried, confident. The scent of cedar and smoke trailed behind, brushing her senses as he passed. He stopped only once, at the hostess stand, to slide a black card across the counter. And then he was gone. Nora blinked. Did he just— The hostess approached their table moments later. "Ladies," she said softly, "your bill has been taken care of." Emma's stomach dropped. "Bye." The hostess smiled. The gentleman who just left. For a heartbeat, none of them spoke. The rain outside hissed louder, wrapping the city in electricity. Olivia leaned forward, whispering like a confession. "Emma, what did you say exactly?" Emma stared at the doorway where he'd disappeared, pulse still unsteady, lips parted in disbelief. Somewhere deep inside, curiosity began to stir, a dangerous curiosity that whispered of power, attraction, and things far beyond coincidence. She tried to laugh again, but her voice came out barely there. "I think," she said, "I just got the boss's attention." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like distant applause. Monday arrived with a clean blue sky that dared the city to pretend it was harmless. Emma Reyes walked into Harbor East's glass tower with her shoulders squared and her pulse traitorous, a bright badge clipped to a blazer she'd thrifted and tailored to whisper competence. She'd rehearsed all weekend. He paid a check, not my future. He heard a joke, not a promise. He is a boss, not my story. The elevator doors opened like a verdict. Inside, polished chrome, 3 strangers, and a silence that had learned to keep secrets. Emma lifted her chin toward the floor display, 54, when a palm, large and quiet, pressed to hold the doors. He stepped in. Lorenzo, no tie, midnight suit, crisp, understated. The kind of suit that didn't shout its price because power never needed to. He nodded to the others, then to her. Not the nod men give when they expect to be recognized, but the nod of someone who notices everything and chooses what to keep. "Good morning, Ms. Reyes," he said, voice even. It slipped under her skin like heat. "Good morning, Mr. DeLuca," she managed, professional as a lock engaged. His gaze tracked the floor numbers. "How was your weekend?" She thought of candlelight, rain, the check that disappeared without his name on it. Don't blush. Productive. A corner of his mouth tugged. So was mine. The elevator hummed, gathering floors like beads on a string. At 47, it paused. A man in maintenance coveralls entered, pushing a cart. Lorenzo shifted slightly, making room without losing presence. He didn't fill the space by accident. He calculated it. At 54, the doors sighed open. Lorenzo held his arm out, an old-world gesture at odds with skyscraper glass. "After you." She stepped into a lobby that smelled faintly of coffee and decisions. On the far wall, a living map of the city displayed their projects, small green lights where buildings rose from old wounds. She loved that map. She'd joined Harbor East because she believed in it, because neighborhoods deserved second chances and children deserved front steps without sirens. "Ms. Reyes," called Julia from reception. "Mr. DeLuca asked if you could see him at 9. Emma blinked. "Me?" Julia's look said the weather changed and forgot to warn you. "Conference B." By 9, Emma's hands had stopped shaking. She took a breath outside Conference B, glass walls, white table, a skyline like a silent witness, and went in. Lorenzo stood by the windows, back to her, studying the East River as if the water owed him answers. The city stretched out in plains of light and steel. He turned. "Ms. Reyes." He gestured to a chair. "Thank you for coming." She sat, back straight. "How can I help, sir?" "I'd prefer Lorenzo, in private." He watched the flicker of surprise and let it pass. "We're beginning an accelerated acquisition of the Anchorage Blocks project. Your name comes up on every file." Emma understood instantly. Anchorage Blocks was a tangle of warehouses and cracked lots between 2 train lines, a place where delivery trucks slept and kids learned to ride bikes in zigzags around oil stains. She'd built the early feasibility models. "It's a complicated parcel. Environmental cleanup, legacy liens." "And human ones," Lorenzo said. He touched a control and a digital stack of photographs lit the wall. Satellite views, parcel maps, old newspaper clippings. In one black and white photo, a teenage boy in a white t-shirt leaned against a fire hydrant, chin up as if daring time to try him. Emma recognized the street name in the caption, South Brooklyn. Long ago. "We can do good there," Emma said, surprised at her own urgency. "If we do it right." "Right." He tasted the word, a small word that carries a lot of weight. He briefed her with a calm that made complexity feel solvable. She took notes she didn't need because the act steadied her. As he spoke, details slipped through his control like glints of river light. A phone that never blinked with notifications, a wristwatch elegant and unbranded, a scar, thin as a thread, just below his thumb. "Why me?" she asked finally. "There are senior analysts who—" "I read your grant proposals," he said, "the ones you wrote when no one asked you to." He didn't smile so much as soften at the edges. "I also watched you walk a contractor through a supply chain delay without raising your voice." Quiet competence is hard to find. Blood moved under her skin in a slow surge. Thank you. His stare held for one extra heartbeat. I value people who say what they mean. 3 words pulsed between them that neither acknowledged. I heard you. A knock at the glass. Julia opened the door a fraction. Lorenzo, Detective Rinaldi is here. Something shifted in the room, a pressure drop, a draft that didn't come from vents. Lorenzo didn't flinch. Send him to my office in 5. Of course. Lorenzo turned back to Emma. You'll lead the Anchorage data room. You'll have my direct line. If anyone gives you trouble, pass them to me. Emma nodded. She wanted to ask why a detective knew which office to walk into without showing a badge. She wanted to ask if Friday night was an accident. She asked neither. When she stood to leave, he remained near the glass. Ms. Reyes. She halted. He inclined his head, the barest suggestion of a smile. Good luck with your productivity this week. Her breath caught. You too, Lorenzo. She escaped. Work swallowed her whole, in the best way. She built a war room from scratch. Vendor lists, lean charts, remediation plans, community meeting schedules. Anchorage blocks spread across her screen like a knot that begged for patient fingers. She stayed late, the office quieting around her until lights dimmed to half and the cleaning crew's carts sang along the corridors. At 8:43 p.m., Nora texted, We still screaming about Mr. Paid our check or nah? Emma typed, erased, typed again, nah, we're whispering. He's my boss. A pause. Then, girl. She set the phone face down and returned to parcel 19B, a small lot with an owner who didn't exist. The same last name appeared on 3 derelict deeds and 1 private school donor plaque. 2 worlds interlaced like fingers under a table. Footsteps approached, measured. She didn't look up until the reflection in her monitor sharpened into a silhouette she already knew. You should go home, Lorenzo said, voice lowered to suit the hour. Or at least pretend you have one. I do, she said lightly. It has a plant that's losing hope. He came closer, hands in pockets. Then save it. Anchorage blocks will still be rotting in the morning. She allowed herself a look at him, not a long one. In the quiet, he seemed less architecture and more man. There were shadows under his eyes that coffee couldn't explain. You have company, she said before thinking, nodding toward the glass. Down the hall, a burly man in a suit waited by Lorenzo's office door. Not security, not corporate. Another shape. Rinaldi, Lorenzo said as if naming the weather. He checks on me when the wind changes. Why? Lorenzo considered her, then gave the most honest answer he could without changing everything. Because some men inherit houses, others inherit storms. The truth landed between them like a coin on marble, cold, ringing, undeniable. She felt strangely relieved that he hadn't lied. Do you need, she began. What I need, he said, is for Anchorage to move clean and fast, which means you shouldn't walk to the subway alone at this hour. I've done it 1,000 times. And I've seen 1,000 men regret believing their city loved them back. A quiet war was happening beneath the words. Emma decided not to take offense at being folded into his concern. I'll call a car. He nodded. Good. He started to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, Friday night. I appreciated the honesty. Heat bloomed along her collarbones. It was wine. Wine lowers the filter, not the truth, he said, and left her with the soft echo of his judgment. The car smelled of leather and rain. She watched the city slide by in panes of light while the driver murmured to someone through an earpiece and pretended not to. When she reached her walk-up in the East Village, a plain sedan idled at the corner. She told herself it had idled at 12 corners earlier and would idle at 12 more after. She told herself many things because that's what it took to sleep. At 6:12 a.m., she woke to 3 emails and a headache. The first email was from Lorenzo's assistant with access credentials. The second was from an environmental firm confirming a soil test. The third was a calendar invite titled Anchorage, closed door with only 2 attendees. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad before she clicked accept. By 9, she'd updated 12 spreadsheets and convinced a city clerk to smile. By 11, she had coffee she didn't need. At noon, she walked into closed door. Lorenzo stood at a whiteboard, tie on for once, sleeves still rolled as if he didn't believe in half measures. On the board, arrows, names, a timeline that felt like a countdown. He circled a last name twice, Calabrese, and underlined it with a stroke that pressed hard enough to squeak. "Who is Calabrese?" Emma asked, easing the door shut behind her. "Depends who's asking," he said. "To the city, a family foundation with philanthropic interests in South Brooklyn. To the people who live between the tracks, a tax on everything that moves." She approached, reading dates. "Protection?" "Tradition," he said dryly. "Which is to say protection's older cousin." She looked at him. "Why would they care about abandoned lots and bad soil?" "The same reason any empire cares about land. Invisible profit, invisible power." He tapped the board twice, then faced her fully. "Anchorage is where two versions of this city meet. The one that writes checks at galas, and the one that collects cash in plastic bags. If we push, one side will push back." She swallowed. "Will they push at me? If they're stupid. And if they're smart, they'll push at me." She absorbed that without asking why he sounded almost relieved by the prospect. "How do we move forward? We build a story even men in good suits can't say no to." He handed her a folder. Inside, letters of support drafted for community leaders who had never spoken to him but would like how the letters made them sound. Legal strategies, PR talking points, the outline of a redemption arc. "You wrote these?" she asked, surprised by the clarity. He shrugged one shoulder. "I believe in second chances." She looked up. "For neighborhoods? Or for men?" His answering smile was slow. "Both." The room felt too small for a moment, as if the walls had leaned in to overhear. She looked at the board again to breathe. A ripple of movement outside the glass caught her eye. Detective Rinaldi had arrived, square shoulders, overcoat that threatened to be permanent. He didn't knock. He opened the door as if it belonged to him. 5 minutes, he said to Lorenzo, not unkindly. 2, Lorenzo countered. Rinaldi's gaze slid to Emma and catalogued her in a second. Not leering, measuring. "Ms. Reyes, right?" She nodded. "Detective, you picked a complicated boss." "I picked complicated work," she said evenly. Rinaldi grunted, then turned back to Lorenzo. "You need to sign the statement." "I need to read it first," Lorenzo said. Rinaldi's sigh carried a decade of unslept nights. "Then read fast." When he was gone, the air settled uneasily. Emma's eyes found the folder again. "Statement?" "An old matter," Lorenzo said. "The past insists." "Is it going to touch Anchorage?" "It touches everything. The question is how hard." Her fingers found the edge of the folder and held on. "I need to know if I'm collateral." "You're not," he said, and the certainty in his tone grazed something fragile inside her. Trust, the most dangerous kind. "Because I'm useful?" she asked. "Because you're you." The word landed and stayed. He straightened his cuffs, closed the distance between them by one step. Not enough to invade. Enough to be remembered. "We meet the city tomorrow at 8. Can you be there early?" "Yes." "Earlier than early." "I'm always earlier than early." For the first time, he laughed. A low sound like someone finding something they hadn't expected to like. "Good." He held the door for her. She passed, and his voice followed, softer. "Emma." She looked back. He gestured to the elevator bank without looking. "Take the center car at night. The cameras in the side ones glitch." She nodded, a chill skating along the back of her neck. "Thanks." She walked to her desk and stood there for a long breath, palms flat, ground under her shoes and sky beyond the glass, and somewhere in between, a man who signed statements and underlined the names of families who owned neighborhoods without owning paperwork. Her phone buzzed. "Unknown number, car waiting on 11th at 6. Use it." L, she typed, "No," deleted it, typed, "You don't have to," deleted that too. Then put the phone face down and tried to remember how to calculate the amortization schedule on a loan for a parcel no one wanted to admit they controlled. At 6, because she was not reckless, she took the car. The driver was different. The route was different. The city never changed and always did. Scaffolding bloomed like metal ivy. Sirens threaded distant streets. When the sedan paused at a red light near a bodega on 14th, a boy on a bike rolled up, tapped the window, peered in with solemn curiosity, and pedaled away. Her building looked smaller than usual, as if it understood it was being watched. She glanced at the corner out of instinct. The plain sedan had returned. This time, someone stepped out. Not Lorenzo, not Rinaldi. A man with a face built from angles and an expression that had no use for charm. He didn't look at her. He looked at the car that had brought her, then at the driver, and smiled without teeth. "Ms. Reyes?" the driver asked, soft but urgent. "Would you like me to—" "No," she said, though her mouth was dry. "I'd like to go inside." She stepped out, kept her pace even, keys ready because theater matters even when it's only for yourself. The man didn't move. He just watched the door close behind her like a curtain on a first act. Upstairs, she double-locked and leaned her forehead against the wood. The plant on the windowsill seemed to forgive her for what she'd said earlier. She watered it anyway. Her phone buzzed on the counter with a text so short it felt like a hand on her shoulder. L. Don't open your door unless you hear my voice or 3 knocks. E. Y. A longer pause this time. Then, L. Because storms are moving over Anchorage, and men with umbrellas like to pretend it isn't raining. She stared at the screen until her reflection blurred. Outside, somewhere in the layered dark, a car door closed and another opened. Somewhere else, a detective signed and unsent a message he couldn't unsend. And across the East River, a name, Calabrese, was underlined twice on a board that didn't erase easily. Emma turned off the light and sat on the floor with her back to the door, heartbeat slow and loud. The city was a map of quiet threats and possible salvations. She wasn't sure yet which direction was which. Down the hall, someone knocked. Once. She held her breath and waited for the second. Then the third. It didn't come. Silence sprawled like a body. Her phone buzzed again. L. Don't open. Not yet. The fourth message arrived before she could type back. Not a text, but a photo. A frame from a security camera, grainy but unmistakable, showing her hallway at 5:57 p.m. A man's shoulder just at the edge of the image. Not the angle-faced watcher from the corner. Someone else. Someone who knew where the blind spots began. Emma stared at the pixelated door that was hers and the shadow that wasn't. She lifted her head, listened, and discovered that even in silence, the city had a heartbeat. She typed 3 words she didn't plan to type. E. I'm listening. And on the river, a wind shifted, as if the water itself had chosen a side. By Tuesday, the city had swapped its rain-slick suit for hard light and sharp edges. The morning carved shadows out of steel, and somewhere beneath it, Emma Reyes drank coffee that burned her tongue and pretended the heat would cauterize her thoughts. She had not told Olivia or Nora about the text messages, the car, the 3 knocks that never became 2 more. She hadn't told them about the way his name, Lorenzo, sounded in her head like a warning that wanted to be a wish. At 7:10 a.m., she was already on the 54th floor, barefoot in flats until the hallway, shoulders squared. She moved through the quiet office like a rumor that hadn't decided who to ruin. Lights woke as she passed. The war room she'd made for Anchorage blocks waited with maps pinned like pressure points and spreadsheets open like veins. On the far wall, the city map pulsed gently, green nodes blinking where Harbor East's projects beat a steady civic rhythm. Anchorage was just an outline, an absence in the grid. She would fill it, she promised herself. She would give it edges and meaning and lights that stayed on. "Ms. Reyes," a voice said from the doorway, and coffee almost leapt out of its cup. He'd come without Harold, Lorenzo in a slate suit and the kind of white shirt that wasn't trying to be pure. A tie today, dark, precise, no pocket square. He never showed off with silk when silence would do. "I thought I was early," she said. "You are," he answered, studying the board. "I'm earlier than that." He came closer and the air did that thing it did near him. Thinned, tightened, attended. She pretended to attend to the screen as he walked the length of the wall, not touching anything, just reading it like a battlefield. "You slept?" he asked without looking at her. "Enough." He made a sound that could have been agreement if it hadn't been exactly the size of doubt. "We'll need your numbers at the community prep this morning." "Community prep?" "South Brooklyn," he said. "A church basement that smells like history and soup. If Anchorage is going to move clean, the people who live between the tracks need to be in the story we tell the city." "Who else will be there?" "Two of mine. A councilwoman who despises me in public and calls me at midnight when her nephew needs a job, and a man who once charged my father a fee for breathing on his block." His eyes flicked to hers. "He's older. That doesn't make him safer." "Calabrese?" she asked. "His keeper," Lorenzo said. "Calabrese learned the piano. Others learned the piano wire." She set the cup down carefully. "Why bring me?" "Because you believe in redemption arcs," he said. "And because they won't believe me unless they believe you." The basement was exactly what he promised. A linoleum floor polished into honesty, folding chairs with scars, a long table bearing coffee, styrofoam cups, and 2 boxes of cookies bought by someone's pension. The fluorescents hummed like gnats. A saint stared down from a cheap frame on cinder block, beatific and tired. People arrived in 2s and 3s, mothers with careful eyes, a man with a Union jacket, a teacher whose smile showed she'd learned the art of reserving judgment for later, a priest with sleeves rolled and hands that had carried more than sacraments. A councilwoman slid into a chair like a cat deciding where to nap. 2 men took up space without seeming to, the way shadows know they are allowed to spread. Lorenzo introduced Emma with no adjectives attached. "She has the math," he said simply, and handed her the room. Emma stood there with the world's worst coffee and her best clipboard and did something she hadn't planned. She told them the truth, not the marketable one, the kind that knows it won't be clapped for. "We won't fix 100 years in a spring," she said, "but we can start by not lying about the soil. Parcel 19B needs remediation that costs more than a councilman's Christmas party. Parcel 12 has a lien held by a man we won't pretend we can't name. Parcel 7 is where a kid scraped his knee last summer because the fence fell and nobody came. We can do better than that." A murmur moved the air. People shifted, some leaning back to listen, some forward to interrupt. She didn't flinch. "We will make a playground with the money earmarked for a mural no one will visit. We will hire from a list the union posts on the church door, not just a list someone's brother emails us. We will write the environmental plan clear enough a sophomore can fact-check it and post it on the library corkboard. We will not turn your houses into hotels with new names. We will fail at something and fix it out loud." The priest's mouth twitched. The teacher nodded once. The councilwoman said nothing, which was a form of praise. "And why should we believe you?" asked the Union jacket, chin tilted slow. "Because I signed my name to all of it," Emma said, pulse steady. "And because she inclined her head toward Lorenzo, "won't be able to sleep if we don't do it right." Lorenzo didn't smile, but something in his bearing gave way, a carefully engineered bridge permitting wait. "Sleep is an overrated negotiation," said a voice from the back. Emma recognized him from the way the room stopped pretending he wasn't there. The keeper, an age that starts counting backward only because numbers get bored going forward. Suit that looked cheap until you noticed it fit like a warning. Hair slicked into intention. Eyes that wrote down debts. "Ms. Reyes," the keeper said, tasting her name. "You speak like a woman who cares for children." "I do," she said. "Then you know what happens when a playground invites men in with clipboards they can't afford to lose." "I know what happens when it doesn't," she answered. He watched her for too long. Then he looked at Lorenzo. They didn't shake hands. They didn't nod. They acknowledged each other the way wolves acknowledge opposite ends of a carcass, through expectation. "Calabrese offers his blessings," the keeper said in a tone that held a joke no one was allowed to laugh at. "Provided you remember which doors not to open." "We're building doors that don't lock from the outside," Lorenzo said. "Doors that don't lock." the keeper repeated, almost fond. How modern. He left before anyone told him he could. The councilwoman exhaled loudly enough to be a sermon. A mother whispered Madonna under her breath. Someone poured more coffee as if caffeine could dilute threat. Emma realized her hand had closed around the pen so tightly it left a crescent in her palm. She set it down. She looked at Lorenzo. He was already watching her. "Don't applaud me," she said. "I didn't win anything." "I don't clap in basements," he murmured. "What do you do?" "Count chairs," he said, eyes sweeping the room. "And remember who sat where." Afterward, they walked the Anchorage perimeter. Their shoes collected dust that wasn't yet history. The sun had parted old clouds to show them where rust ended and new steel might begin. A train clattered by like an argument that had decided not to stop. "This used to be good," Emma said, pointing to a warehouse whose bricks leaned like tired men. "It was never good," Lorenzo said. "It was familiar." She watched two kids invent a game with a stick and a plastic bottle cap. One of them glanced over, measured them, and kept playing because rich people come and go but bottle caps stay. "Would you have stayed?" she asked, "if your father wasn't who he was?" He didn't answer immediately. He always took the measure of a question before paying for it. "I would have left sooner," he said. They turned a corner and the air shifted temperature, the way it does on blocks where tragedy happened and never got properly named. A mural showed a boy with a basketball and a crown that wasn't heavy yet. The paint had peeled into a geography of neglect. "I made a map once," Lorenzo said, his voice smaller even though his body wasn't. "The streets I wasn't allowed to cross. The steps I wasn't allowed to sit on. The stores where my last name cost $1 extra." "What did you do with the map?" "I built a bigger one. Anchorage, and every place like it," he said. He stopped, hands in pockets, momentarily less myth and more man. There was a line at his mouth that looked like it had been carved by saying no too often to people he wished he could have said yes to. "Emma," he said, not looking at her, which made it more honest. "If you ever want out, say the word. I'll take your name off any paper that puts a target on you." "I wrote it there myself," she said. "Then I'll guard the paper." He started walking again. She matched him, half a step behind because someone had to keep the ledger of who moved first. A siren flared somewhere else. A bottle rolled. A door slammed. The city inked itself around them in strokes that were not entirely friendly. A shadow peeled away from a loading dock and became a man. Not the keeper. Younger. Hungry. "DeLuca," he called, as if testing how the name would feel in his mouth. Another figure appeared behind him. A third stayed in the doorway as a smudge. "Not today," Lorenzo said, not stopping, not speeding up. "That's your line?" The first man laughed. "Not today? Not for you," Lorenzo said. The first man looked at Emma, slow. "She's cute." Emma's throat went very calm. Fear makes some people move. It makes other people still. She had learned stillness when stillness meant survival. Lorenzo turned then, fully, a shift like a tide reversing. He stepped just far enough into the man's space to make air evaluate itself. "Say it again," he said conversationally. "Say what?" the man asked, but his laugh broke at the edge. Lorenzo's smile was almost kind. "That you can count your teeth." In the space between words, Emma saw things that weren't happening but might. Elbows, concrete, blood that looks darker outdoors. She hadn't come to South Brooklyn to collect scenes. She had come to build. "Lorenzo," she said, a hand near his sleeve but not on it. "We have a meeting at 2. He didn't look at her. He did something else. Listened to her voice, the temperature of it, the instruction disguised as invitation. The man spat to the side, a theater of bravery. "You can't keep her in cars forever, DeLuca." Lorenzo's gaze moved to him with polite interest. "I don't keep anyone," he said, and guided Emma down the block by the simple geometry of stepping where she could step with him. When they reached the corner, he checked behind them once, twice. "There are people who test a fence just to prove it exists," he said. "Then there are people who test it for weakness." "Which were those?" she asked. "New to the job," he said, "but enthusiastic." She should have been more shaken. Instead, she felt steady in a way she didn't trust. like walking on a frozen lake and deciding to enjoy the view. The steadiness did not come from believing nothing would happen. It came from believing he would stand between. "Thank you," she said, eyes forward. "For what?" "For counting teeth so I didn't have to." He exhaled like he'd been holding a door against wind. "You shouldn't have to count anything except blessings and grant approvals." "Blessings are hard to quantify," she said. "Not if you grew up without them." The day ran until the numbers went blurry. They returned to the tower, to glass that made the river look like an exhibit. Emma filed memos, wrangled timelines, found a loophole in a zoning regulation that could save 18 days. Lorenzo existed in adjacent time, meetings that weren't on the calendar, calls answered with a first initial and a silence. Detective Rinaldi came and went like a weather system. Boots, paper, the smell of rain that got into wool. They didn't ask each other the questions that would change who they were allowed to be. At 9:26 p.m., when the office had emptied enough for the building to hear itself, Emma's computer froze in an act of mercy. She rubbed her eyes, stood, and stretched until her spine argued, then relented. Outside her window, a barge moved like a thought no one wanted to say out loud. She decided to walk. "No," Lorenzo said from the threshold, as if she'd spoken. She turned. "You don't know what I was going to say." "You were going to say you're calling a car," he amended. She folded her arms. "You can't always send one." "I can, until Anchorage stops smelling like a fuse. Humor me." She might have argued if his tie wasn't loosened, and his eyes didn't look like someone had tried to erase the color and failed. Power is a costume men wear until it wears them. He looked worn at the edges in a way that made something treacherous and warm move through her. "Fine," she said, "but only because I like the leather smell." "I know," he said, and then, so quietly she almost didn't catch it, "You like having a driver who doesn't talk." Her mouth parted. "How?" "You breathe differently when they do," he said, almost apologetic. "I notice things." She didn't know where to put the knowledge that he had noticed her breathing. She filed it under dangerous and useful and ignored both labels. The elevator delivered them to the lobby where night had moved in and made itself comfortable. A security guard nodded. The guard on nights had learned Emma's name in one try and Lorenzo's in none, because no one needed to say it. Outside the building, the air had a metallic bite. The car waited, warm. She hesitated with the door open. "I can get home alone," she said. "I know," he said, and it was the way he said it that made her get in. The driver took a route that avoided the avenue where people sell you faces and shoes. They cut across a street where a fruit stand glowed like absolution. At her block, the plain sedan wasn't there. Relief and suspicion arrive in the same coat, one buttoned, one not. She looked anyway. "Go upstairs," Lorenzo said, watching the sidewalks, not her. "Are you—" "I'll wait until the light in your kitchen goes on." She laughed before she could stop it. "You make that sound like an old movie." "I am an old movie," he said. With extra scenes they cut from the theaters. She stepped out, every sense alert, then smiled at the foolishness of smiling at an empty stoop. The door opened. She went in. She climbed. She turned the bolt. She walked to the kitchen and flicked on the light as if that could bless a place. Down on the street, a car idled and then moved. She watched taillights thin and believed, against evidence, against training, in the specific mercy of being seen. Her phone buzzed with a text she didn't know she wanted. L. "Good night, Emma." E. "Good night." 3 dots appeared, vanished. She put the phone on the counter, turned to fix the plant's posture like a nurse with a patient, and flinched at the sound, a soft, deliberate scrape near the door. She went still, listening the way animals listen when the forest shifts. Silence arranged itself around the scrape and pretended to have always been there. She took a step closer, then another, until she could see the thin cut of hallway beneath the door. A shadow moved through that cut and was gone, not like a person passing, like a person choosing not to. Her phone buzzed again. L. "Don't." She let out air she hadn't meant to keep. Fingers trembled less than she expected. Fear is a belief system. She chose a different faith. I won't. She slept eventually, because bodies insist. She dreamed a dream that wasn't quite a memory. A church basement, a map, a man counting chairs and teeth. She woke with the certainty of someone who knows she has to run toward the thing everyone else mistakes for fire. By Wednesday, the office crackled with the complicated cheer of almosts. Almost approvals, almost clarity, almost safe. Emma's inbox multiplied like ungoverned cells. She triaged, soothed, insisted, charmed. She found herself smiling at the clerk who hated smiling, and he smuggled her a file he wasn't supposed to make a copy of. At 3:40 p.m., the building's glass reflected a sky that had decided to brood. The lights in the hall flickered once, just enough to make superstition sit up. Emma saved her work with the speed of someone who has learned to write love letters in pencil. Julia's heels approached like punctuation. She appeared at the door with a face that meant I have news and it thinks it's important. Emma, she said low, can you come to Conference B? Is it? Now, Julia said, which was an answer, and led her. Conference B was already occupied. Lorenzo at the far end of the glass table, Detective Rinaldi standing like an exclamation mark, and an open laptop that showboated a headline as if it had rehearsed. Rinaldi turned the machine slightly so the world could read. City watchdog leaks, bribery, memo, Harbor East. Fast tracks, South Brooklyn deal, with a subhead that made the room contract. Analyst Emma Reyes named in internal correspondence. Emma's chest remembered how to not move. I didn't, she started, then stopped because the sentence was too small for what needed saying. That's not my memo. Rinaldi's eyes didn't accuse. They evaluated. You signed it. She stared. It was her name, her signature, a paragraph she would never write, language slick as oil. Careful in the wrong ways, pressing the city to expedite in exchange for a charitable donation that could hide in 1,000 legal pockets. I did not write this, she said clearly, because sometimes the truth is a hammer, not a song. Lorenzo didn't sit. He leaned forward, palms on glass, shoulders loaded. Of course she didn't. Emma looked at him and felt something she hadn't planned on feeling in the middle of a professional death. Steadied. Who sent it? She asked. Rinaldi touched a key. A redacted email trail glowed with the smugness of someone who believes redactions are clothes. An anonymous account from a device that pings off a tower near the Anchorage perimeter. The memo was found in the city clerk's night drop. Time-stamped noon. Printed on your floor. That's impossible, she said. I haven't. Lorenzo straightened. They moved early, he said, and the words were not for her. They want leverage. Against who? Rinaldi asked, though his look already knew. Against me, Lorenzo answered, as if discussing weather. Emma's eyes flicked to the glass wall, the city beyond it, pretending indifference. I'll go to the clerk, she said. I'll explain, show my drafts, the timestamps. You'll do nothing alone, Lorenzo said, turning to her so fast the air moved. They put your name on paper because they think I'll fold when they touch what I don't want touched. Will you? Rinaldi asked. Lorenzo's smile didn't arrive. No. Silence settled, heavy but not suffocating. Plans assemble themselves invisibly in men used to making plans inside their bones. We'll pull the server logs, Emma said, fighting the tremor in her hands by keeping them flat. Julia can confirm who printed what, when. We'll show chain of custody. A chime cut the sentence. Lorenzo's phone lit without ringing, a name flashing that Emma didn't recognize, and Rinaldi pretended not to. He answered with a single breath. Listened. The line bled a thin voice into the room, the kind that has done bad things and doesn't apologize for its salary. He ended the call and looked at Emma. What? She asked. They didn't take the memo to the press first, he said. They took it to the people we met in the basement. Her breath hit something inside and ricocheted. The community. The keeper, he said. Calabresi's men now own a copy of your signature. Why? She asked, even as the answer wrote itself. Because it's elegant, Lorenzo said. If the city has reason to stall, we have reason to beg. And men like the keeper always sell mercy wholesale. Rinaldi scrubbed a hand over his jaw. I can run the prints on the paper if it's in city custody. It isn't, Lorenzo said. Then I'll take the file in the clerk's office, Rinaldi replied, and the promise in his voice was not the kind you write down. Emma pressed her thumb into her palm until the crescent returned. She pictured the basement, the chairs, the saint. She pictured the kids playing with a bottle cap that deserved to be a ball. She pictured her name under a lie. Let me talk to them, she said. No, Lorenzo said. At the same time, Rinaldi did. They'll believe me, she insisted. They'll enjoy not believing you, Lorenzo said softly. It's leveraged twice. She swallowed. So what now? Now, Lorenzo said. You come with me. Where? He didn't answer. He looked at Rinaldi. Give me 24 hours. You always want 24, Rinaldi muttered, and you always use 23. Then you know what to do with the extra, Lorenzo said, and was already moving. Emma caught up in the hall. You can't just... I can, he said, not unkindly. They're going to come to your apartment. They're going to ask questions with flowers on the stems. They're going to look at your books and decide which ones make you soft. You're not going to be there. She stopped walking. Where, Lorenzo? He turned then, and the answer in his face was the kind people don't like to give because it feels like taking off your coat in a room full of strangers. Where I can watch the door, he said. What door? Every door. She almost said no. She almost said, this is my life and I don't run and you don't own my safety. She almost said a dozen brave, lonely things. Instead, because storms were moving over Anchorage and some men pretended it wasn't raining and she was tired of umbrellas that broke, she said, I need my laptop. We'll get it on the way, he said. They reached the elevator. The center car opened like it had been listening. As the doors began to slide, Julia sprinted down the hall, heels turning into percussion. Emma, she called, breath a thin ribbon. You need to see this. Julia shoved her phone into Emma's hand. The screen showed a brand new account posting a brand new thread, a photo of the forged memo, a caption that hissed like a match. They sell us and call it progress. And below it, a second image. Someone's phone camera in a church basement today, angled from the back row, catching Emma mid-sentence, mouth open, hand on a map, Lorenzo a dark shoulder to her left. What's the handle? Emma asked, though she already knew. Julia swallowed. You kept the receipts. Rinaldi's voice from somewhere behind. I've been trying to shut that guy down for a year. Emma looked at Lorenzo. Something sparked in his eyes that wasn't rage. It was colder, smarter, a choice. Whoever filmed you, he said, wants a meeting. With who? With me, he answered, and they want you there to watch. The elevator chimed again, impatient this time, as if even machinery knew that timing was about to matter. Emma stepped in. The doors began to close on the map, the glass, the river. Where? She asked. Lorenzo's phone answered for him, lighting with a message that said everything a threat says when it thinks it's being polite. Midnight in Manhattan is a different species of dark, slick, sentient, listening. The river wore a film of light like a lie it told the shore, and somewhere above it a warehouse window reflected a city that never admitted what it spent. 3 knocks. Emma froze where she stood in the unlit corridor, breath held the way you hold a note in your chest when you're not sure you're allowed to sing. Lorenzo didn't move. His hand hovered a whisper above her shoulder, not touching, a promise disguised as distance. 3 knocks again, measured, identical, like someone who had practiced. Lorenzo glanced at the camera tucked into the corner of the ceiling. The monitor on a folding table showed a grainy feed, a stairwell, a metal door, a figure in a hood. He leaned close enough for her to smell tobacco he hadn't smoked. You stay by the pillar, he murmured. If it's wrong, I shut it. If it's right, she asked. If it's right, it will be wrong in a different way. He went to the door, not fast, not slow, every step a negotiation with the kind of night that charges interest. The figure kept their head down. The camera showed hands, empty and open. Lorenzo unlatched the first bolt, then the second. He left the chain. The door opened 2 inches. Say it, he said, a woman's voice tight with fear. I don't have time to prove I'm not a trap." "Then you're either a trap," Lorenzo said mildly, "or in a hurry." She pushed a small padded envelope through the gap. "They said to leave it in the church. I couldn't. I saw the way they looked at her, at the girl. I work at the council office. I'm not—" Her breath stuttered. "I'm not built for this." Lorenzo didn't touch the envelope. "Name. Marina. Last name. Does it matter if I make one up?" "I prefer the truth," he said. "But I've made do with less." She laughed, a broken sound. "You're exactly like they said." He considered. "I apologize." "Don't," she said, and for a moment the door was a confessional screen. "They sent the leak to keep the receipts and the keeper at the same time. They want a stall and a price. The memo's fake, but the timing isn't. It'll look true by morning." "Who's they?" he asked. "People who eat their meals at tables with your last name carved into the underside," she said. "People who sign checks with one pen and threats with another." "And you?" "I make coffee," she said simply, "and copies I'm not supposed to." Lorenzo reached out, took the envelope with 2 fingers. "Go home, Marina. Take a different bus than usual." Her laugh snapped again. "I live with my mother. She thinks I'm a nurse. She can't sleep unless she hears the elevator at midnight. Tonight she'll hear, whatever the city decides. Keep the girl safe. Emma, right? I liked how she talked about the playground." Emma didn't mean to step forward, but some words tug you by the ribs. "Marina," she said, and Marina's head jerked as if the name were a hand on her shoulder. "Please," Marina said, voice small behind metal and distance. "Burn it after you read it." "I don't burn things," Lorenzo said. "I keep them." "That's what I'm afraid of," she whispered, and fled down the stairs, a shadow that forgot to look back. The door swung shut. The chain lifted back into its cradle. Lorenzo returned to the monitor and watched an empty stairwell until being sure felt like superstition. Then he opened the envelope, a USB drive. A single sheet of paper with a printout of an email header. An internal chain where Emma's name was a bead on a string that looped from unknown to accounts payable to a private Gmail that belonged to nobody and everyone. And a note handwritten in a cramped script. "If you know what to look for, you'll recognize the hand. It isn't the councilwoman. It's the man who stands behind her at photos. He plays chess. So do you. Move first." Emma's head throbbed. "The aide," she said. "I remember his cufflinks were wrong for his tie." Lorenzo's mouth tilted, humorless. "I remember he smiled too quickly when I lied." He plugged the drive into a laptop that never saw the internet. A folder unfolded, scans of memos, a photo of a printer queue on Harbor East's floor with her name at the top, and a timestamp that was true in the way clocks can be if you teach them to lie. Screenshots of kept the receipts, messages where the punctuation knew its way around rage. And a video, a clip from a hallway camera she'd never noticed in City Hall. A hand slipping a manila folder into a night drop slot, the cuff visible, the cufflink a cheap lion with a chipped tooth. "Chess," Lorenzo said softly. "They're playing on 3 boards, city, street, our floor." He took the drive out as if removing a blade from a wound, slid it into his pocket. "We go to Rinaldi at dawn," he said. "He'll tell me I'm late. He'll be right." Emma nodded and felt the fatigue sit down in her bones. She went to the folding table, palmed the envelope, and put it back, irrationally careful, as if envelopes were living things that needed to be tucked in. "Bathroom's down the hall," Lorenzo said, distracted, eyes still scanning the printout, mind already 3 streets away. "Third door. Don't touch the first 2. "I wasn't planning a scavenger hunt," she said. "I value initiative," he said without looking at her, and she let herself laugh at the absurdity of humor managing to breathe here. The warehouse had been something once, maybe a textile place, maybe the kind of light manufacturing the city likes to miss when it leaves. The bathroom was clean in the way that means a man with high standards had paid a man who didn't complain. She washed her face until the night peeled off, and when she looked up at the mirror, the woman looking back was somebody who had started to believe the word "we" when it came out of a dangerous man's mouth. Back in the dim corridor, she moved quietly because quiet felt like respect. She passed the first door he'd told her not to touch and didn't. She passed the second and looked away. She reached the third and set her palm on the metal push plate. A noise behind her, a soft click, like a camera or a trigger. She turned too fast and caught herself on the jamb. Nothing moved. The click could have been the building swallowing. She exhaled, pushed the door open, and walked into a room that didn't belong to a warehouse. A wall of flat files, a steel desk grown out of the floor, shelves with binders whose spines bore no names, only dates, a closed safe in the corner with a dial that had shrugged at locksmiths. The air smelled like paper that remembered, and on the desk, in a stack of 5 folders, a tab with her name. She didn't touch it. She stood and stared until standing, and staring, felt like a decision too. The tab said, Ries, Emma, in a firm hand. Beneath it, 4 other tabs with names of people she had come to trust in concentric rings. Nora Alvarez, Olivia Hart, Julia Cho, Rinaldi D. The folders were not thick. They were not thin. They looked like the width of a person you think you know. She reached, stopped, reached again. Her fingers were steady when she slipped the folder free. The first page was a simple fact sheet: address, age, university, past employment. The second was a copy of a scholarship essay she had written at 19 about why cities deserved good futures. The third was a photo of her apartment door at 7:13 p.m. from a camera across the street that she had not known was there. "Don't," Lorenzo said from the doorway. She didn't jump. She didn't spin. She turned slowly because slow gives dignity to moments that threaten to take it. "You keep files on me," she said. "Not a question. Questions have hope in them. I keep files on everyone who can be used to hurt what I'm trying to build," he said. "That includes me." "That especially includes you," he said, and didn't step into the room, as if crossing that threshold would change the grammar of a truth. She turned another page. A list of her published grant proposals, annotated in a script that was his, honest, precise, underestimated. A printout of the forged memo, with a red mark circling the way her signature dipped on the M. A dip she'd had since forging her mother's name on a late permission slip in 9th grade. A note beneath, not hers. The folder was not a dossier designed to own her. It was a shield that assumed she would be attacked. She closed it anyway. "You should have told me," she said. "I would have," he said, "if I had time to do it without sounding like every man who ever said, 'for your own good.' That's how you sound now." "I know." They stood in a room full of people neither of them could afford to be. "I don't spy on you," he said finally, the words careful, not defensive. "I have people watch your street so I can sleep. I've watched too many kitchens go dark for the wrong reasons. I won't add yours to that list." She wanted to be angry. Anger would have been clean. Instead, she felt something messier, like standing on a beach where the water had other plans. "You could have asked," she said softly. "For permission to protect you?" he asked, a shadow of humor that wasn't funny. "For permission to know me," she said. Silence folded over them. The safe blinked with no lights. Somewhere in another room, a pipe exhaled like an old man. "I don't know how to ask for that," he said. It sounded like a confession he hadn't planned to make. "Not without breaking things I need unbroken." Her laugh was thin. "You mean you?" "I mean Anchorage," he said, and then after a beat so small it could only belong to men who learn hesitancy late. "And me." She set the folder down as if returning a weapon. "What else do you have on me?" He gave the smallest of smiles without teeth. 3 grocery receipts, a library fine, 2 grant proposals you never submitted, and a picture of you at 8 years old in a soccer jersey with a stain you tried to hide with your hand." Her throat closed. "Where did you get that?" "You mailed it with a thank you to a volunteer coordinator the summer you worked at the shelter," he said. "She keeps boxes of every kid who made her believe in hope. She keeps their addresses in pencil. She told me stories about you that you forgot you told her." Emma pressed her palm into the desk to stay upright. "I don't like how much you know," she said. "I don't like how much I need to," he returned. They looked at each other without moving, the room full of unsaid things stacking slowly between them like bricks. Her phone vibrated on the desk. She flinched, glanced down. A new post from kept the receipts. A photo of her building's door, tonight, with 3 red hearts doodled over the peephole and the caption, "Is she home? Is she safe? Did she sell us?" He read over her shoulder. She let him. Privacy is a kind of currency you stop counting during a siege. "They're steering the crowd," Lorenzo said. "If the city stalls, the feed turns you into the villain. People are tired of invisible villains. You have a face." "I'm not afraid of an account," she said. "You should be," he said, meeting her gaze because he owed her that honesty. "A crowd needs only 2 things, a story and a spark. And you?" she asked. "What do you need?" "Less gasoline," he said, "and more time." He took the phone, thumb hovering over the screen as if it might bite. He typed something and stopped, jaw working like a man who'd been fed words that didn't suit him. He handed the phone back. "Block it," he said. "Don't feed it." "I want to answer," she whispered. "I want to tell them we're building a playground that doesn't lock from the outside. They'll turn the playground into a hashtag and sell t-shirts with your face crying beside it," he said. "Let me do this my way." "And what way is that?" "Quietly," he said, and then loudly, when it's too late to stop. Something broke then. Not between them, but in the room, a sound like a laugh you weren't supposed to hear. Lorenzo was moving before she could form a question. He crossed to the first door she'd passed, opened it in one motion that was all muscles and math. Empty. He pivoted to the second. Same. The laugh had been ventilation or memory. "Come on," he said, voice different, the difference that happens when a man leaves a thought he likes for a threat he knows. "We go to Rinaldi." They left the file room how you leave a chapel after telling the truth, careful not to scuff what you just said. The corridor exhaled them. The warehouse took them back. Outside, the car was waiting again, as if the city had decided to be kind in one small square of itself. The driver nodded. Lorenzo slid in beside her, phone in hand. The night's messages stacked like the floors in the tower where they pretended sunlight could solve things. "Marina's right," Emma said, as the car merged into the black ribbon of West Street. "You're exactly like they said." "How do they say I am?" he asked, not looking at her. "Like a man who keeps things," she said, "and makes rooms out of secrets." "What do you say I am?" She thought of the folder, the soccer photo, the way he counted chairs in a basement and teeth in a shadow. A man who wants to build a city that would not have kept the boy he was out. He didn't answer for a full block. When he did, it wasn't an answer. "When this is over," he said, "tell me a story where I'm just a boss and it's a good word." She stared out at the river until the lights smeared. "Only if you make it true." They drove until the warehouse district gave way to streets that remembered their names. Rinaldi answered on the second ring, voice gravel and coffee. "You better be bleeding." "Paper cuts," Lorenzo said, "but sharp ones." "I'll meet you at the 14th precinct," Rinaldi replied. "And DeLuca, bring aspirin. You're going to hate what's on my desk." "What is it?" "I'll let the paper introduce itself," Rinaldi said, and hung up. They pulled up to a curb that had been chewed by snowplows for a decade. Inside the precinct, the fluorescent lights did that thing they do, making skin look honest and no one beautiful. Rinaldi sat behind a stack of files that looked like the city had sneezed. He didn't bother with greetings. He pushed a folder forward, a neat packet bound with a blue strap. "This," he said, "was dropped by courier at the ethics office at 1047. Anonymous. It's a dossier." Emma's stomach recognized dread before her eyes finished reading. The cover page, Reyes, Emma, Conflict of Interest Audit. The second page, a photo of Emma and Lorenzo, taken through the glass of Conference B, the angle from a long lens, 2 figures' foreheads, too close to be purely professional. The caption in bold, "Romantic relationship affects Anchorage decision-making." She reached for the table because the floor tilted. "No," she said too softly. Rinaldi's look was apologetic without being soft. "They moved your king," he said. "You either retreat or you change the game." Lorenzo took the packet and skimmed with the speed of a man who has learned to read as if it might explode. Half of this is nothing. The other half is a poem that forgot it wasn't evidence. Rinaldi shrugged once. Ethics won't care. They'll open an inquiry. The timeline stalls. Anchorage becomes a poker chip. Emma swallowed against a throat that had other ideas.
We're not. You will not explain yourself to a machine, Lorenzo said, and his voice had iron threaded through it. You will not lend it your shame to polish into spectacle. Rinaldi's mouth pulled in what might almost have been fondness if it weren't a police station at midnight. He's right. You say we're not. They'll print it like you said we are. Emma lifted her head. So what do we do? Lorenzo slid the packet back to Rinaldi.
We find the aide who wears lions on his sleeves. We find who bought him the lions. We follow the money until it forgets it's wearing cologne. Rinaldi tapped the drive Lorenzo had brought from Marina. What's this? Receipts, Lorenzo said. Not the kind with hashtags. Rinaldi plugged it into a battered precinct laptop that had seen too much to be impressed. Screens filled with scans and timestamps. He grunted. This I can use. He looked up at Emma. You can go home. Or wherever he stashed you. She's with me, Lorenzo said. I figured, Rinaldi replied. Try not to turn it into a headline. Emma found her voice again. It surprised her that it sounded like it belonged to someone who had not broken. I want Anchorage to live, she said. Not because it will look good in a report, because I promised it something in a basement with bad coffee. Rinaldi's eyes softened by a degree. The city needs people who keep promises when the coffee's bad, he said. I'll call you when the lion roars. Outside, the air had the thinness of 3 a.m. The city was caught between yesterday and whatever dared to come next. The car slid into the kind of silence that is almost kindness. Emma pressed her palm to the cold window until it warmed under her skin. Where now? She asked. Home, he said, and she knew he didn't mean hers or his. He meant the warehouse with the files and the rooms that weren't what they were. He meant the place where he could watch the door. They reached it in 20 minutes and a lifetime. The driver cut the engine. The river made its small noises like secrets practicing speeches. Lorenzo keyed them in. The corridor smelled like steel and sleep. The monitor still showed the stairwell, empty as a stage waiting for actors who were late. Sleep, he said. Try. She looked at him. Will you? His smile was tired and true. I'll pretend. She nodded and went to the small room he'd given her. Cot, clean sheets, a lamp with a shade that had learned humility. She set her phone face down. She didn't turn off the light. The bulb hummed like a lullaby for people who don't get those. On the other side of the wall, he sat at the steel desk and opened the folder with her name again, not to own it, but to inventory the ways he might fail her. He added a page, ethics packet, counter-narrative. He wrote 3 bullet points and crossed out 2. He pulled the drawer, took out a photo of a boy with a map drawn in ballpoint on his palm. He didn't see the first message arrive. He didn't see the second. Emma did, because her phone buzzed, and buzzed again, and the rhythm was wrong. She flipped it over and the screen glared. A kept, the receipts. The girl talks about playgrounds. The man talks about doors. But tonight we learned who owns the keys. With a video attachment. Her thumb hovered, then surrendered. The video opened to show a hallway, her hallway, lit by the indifferent light of a cheap bulb. A man's shoulder, the shoulder from earlier, the shadow in the still, moved into frame. He set something on the floor gently, the way you set down flowers and bombs. The camera panned. The object was a file, a blue strap, a cover page. Reyes, Emma, conflict of interest audit. The video cut, the caption refreshed. Knock, knock. Emma's body remembered cold in a visceral way. She pushed up from the cot, crossed the room, and opened the door into the corridor. Lorenzo, she called, voice too calm to be safe. He was already there, in the doorway, eyes on her face, reading the words she hadn't said. What is it? She held up the phone. He watched the clip, all the color in his gaze condensing like weather right before it decides to be a storm. How did they get a key? He asked. low. They didn't, she said. They used the knock. He didn't ask which knock. You don't teach wolves how to count. From the monitor, a new sound. The stairwell camera picked up a shape at the door again. A hand, a pause, then 3 knocks. The old metal thrummed with the old code as if the night had learned the trick and come to collect. Lorenzo's shoulders went still. He reached to the side without looking and slid a drawer open. The weight he lifted out didn't glint because glinting is for men who forget the rules. He set it down softly out of her sight. "Stay behind me," he said. "Is it Marina?" Emma asked. "If it is," he said, the words like steel wrapped in velvet. She brought a second story. The door waited, patient as a debt. The city held its breath. 3 knocks, again. Morning came the color of regret, soft gray, like the city couldn't face what it had done overnight. Emma woke in the warehouse room, the hum of the river her only witness. Her phone blinked with messages. Julia warning her not to come to work, Olivia begging to see her, an unknown link pulsing like bait. She ignored it. Julia's voice trembled over the line. "They posted everything, Em. The story, the photo. Ethics put you on leave." "On leave," Emma repeated, tasting the words like metal. "They're calling you the playground princess." A silence. Then Emma's laugh, short and empty. "They work fast." Before she could hang up, Lorenzo appeared in the doorway. His tie hung from one fist, his expression already carrying the day's war. He set a newspaper down. The headline was a wound. "Harbor East boss under investigation. Employee at center of scandal." Her image stared back in grainy light beside his silhouette. "They'll call me in," he said quietly. "A man died near the Anchorage site. They'll want a villain." She looked up, heart shaking. "You didn't." "No," he said simply. "But truth isn't the product they're selling. I'll go with you." "You won't," he replied. "They'll turn you into proof of what they want to believe." Her throat burned. "I can't just stay here." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If you want to help me, don't let them touch you. Not your face, not your name." He handed her an envelope. "If you don't hear my voice by midnight, read it. Don't talk like that. Emma," he said, softer now, "the city will try to make you forget what we were before they told you what we are. Don't let them." He left. The day collapsed piece by piece. News vans parked outside the precinct. Microphones hunted her name. Rinaldi stood in front of the cameras and tried to speak reason into chaos. "He's not under arrest," he said, but the crowd only heard guilty. By noon, every screen in Manhattan carried their story. By 1, Emma's landlord texted to check in. By 2, a kept the receipts posted another edit. Her voice from the basement speech cut to make her sound complicit. At 3, she couldn't watch anymore. She sat on the edge of the cot, hands clasped. When she finally opened the envelope, the handwriting was unmistakable. "Emma, if you're reading this, I failed to reach you before midnight. What they're saying isn't new. It's a story I used to deserve. I'm trying to deserve something else now. Don't let them teach you fear with my name. If I disappear, it's to keep the storm off you. Anchorage is not a place. It's what a body does when it refuses to drift. Hold fast. I'll find the weather that lets me come back to you. Lorenzo." She didn't cry. She sat still, holding the paper like a living thing. When midnight came, no one knocked. At 12:17, her phone rang. A clipped female voice from the ethics board. "Please refrain from public comments, Ms. Reyes. You've become recognizable." She hung up. Recognizable. The word felt like a curse. She didn't sleep. At dawn, she met Olivia in a small cafe far from the tower. Olivia set 2 coffees down and whispered, "They're saying he confessed." Emma's breath caught. "He wouldn't." "Then prove it," Olivia urged, eyes wet. Emma couldn't answer because the cafe TV flickered, flashing breaking news. DeLuca in custody, a black SUV, a man in handcuffs. The room went silent. Emma pushed through the door before Olivia could stop her. The city's cold slapped her awake. Screens in store windows looped the same image, Lorenzo's silhouette disappearing behind tinted glass. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. "Ms. Reyes?" a male voice rasped. "Don't go where they show you. Watch the docket. Watch the door." "What door?" "Any door," the voice said, and hung up. Minutes later, an alert hit her screen. Transfer delayed. Then another. Central booking fire alarm. Then, defendant missing. Emma stood on the sidewalk, the world roaring around her, heartbeat drowning the noise. He was gone. Rinaldi found her that night, rain streaking his coat. "The fire was real," he said. "Someone helped him. The city's calling it an escape." "Then he's free," she whispered. "For now," Rinaldi said. "They'll make that sound worse than it is." When he left, the warehouse felt too quiet, like a held breath. Emma walked to the file room. Her folder lay open. She added one page, a note for the playground, for the kids, for the tired saint on the wall. Let her smile this time. The clock struck midnight again. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. A pause, then, "Emma." Her knees weakened. "Lorenzo." He exhaled. "Don't say my name again. Machines listen." "Are you safe?" "I'm not in a cell. That's enough." "That's not enough," she said, her voice breaking. "Tell me you're safe." "I am." "Good. Then we're winning. Where are you?" Silence. Then, "Anchorage still lives if you stay still. Will you trust me?" "I already do." He laughed softly like someone remembering sunlight. "Then hold fast." "Lorenzo!" The line clicked once and died. Emma stood there, phone pressed to her chest, his voice still trembling in the air between heartbeats. Outside, the city exhaled smoke and sirens. Inside, she whispered to no one, "Come back to me." Dawn burned low over the river, a thin red seam stitching the city back together. Emma stood at the warehouse window, a mug cooling between her palms, watching tugboats shoulder the morning into place. The night had left fingerprints, headlines, whispers, a rumor that walked faster than truth. But something in the light felt stubbornly good, like a vow kept in secret. Her phone buzzed once. 3 knocks, 10 minutes. No sender, no signature. A code that didn't need one. She set the mug down without drinking, crossed the corridor that had learned her footsteps, and waited by the door where steel tasted like old rain. The stairwell monitor showed emptiness, then a shadow, then a man stepping into view with the caution of someone who knew doors remember. 3 knocks, measured, identical. "Emma," he said through the metal, and the word was an anchor thrown straight into her chest. She slid the chain, opened the door 2 inches, then all the way. Lorenzo stepped inside, thinner by a night, his shirt dark with city and effort, his eyes bright with the kind of focus that hunts only what it means to save. He didn't touch her, not with hands, with a look that made touching unnecessary and inevitable. "You're hurt," she whispered, "only where it reminds me to keep breathing." A corner of his mouth tugged. "Rinaldi will say I owe him 3 apologies and a sandwich." "Do you?" "2 apologies," he said. "The sandwich is non-negotiable." He turned to the camera, lifted his chin toward the lens, then back to her. "We have to move. Fast, quiet, final." "Final?" The word tasted like risk and freedom. "What do you have?" He pulled a folded page from his pocket. Handwritten names, arrows, a timeline like a fuse. "Marina's Drive gave us the pattern." Rinaldi pulled the print on the lion cuff link. "The aid is a bridge to a PR shell that pays invoices for community engagement." The money circles from a Calabrese foundation through 2 clean hands to a man who answers to a name I haven't said in 10 years. "Whose?" "Rocco DeLuca," he said, and for a heartbeat the room forgot how to hold sound. "My uncle." Emma went very still. "He's the one who built the first map and charged my father rent for crossing it," Lorenzo said evenly. "He never forgave me for refusing to collect. He thinks Anchorage is my vanity project. He prefers the old economy. Fear, envelopes, favors that come due. He hired the aide to salt the ground. He fed the watchdog. He bought the dossier. He has the keeper on retainer and the councilwoman on speed dial. And Matteo Russo? Rocco's, not mine. The fall was theater, a message and a match. His jaw tightened. They planned to keep me in a box while the city stalled you into silence, then sell mercy back to you at double. Emma's throat ached. How do we stop it? By making a truth even men who like lies can't afford to ignore. He unfolded a second paper, an address on the Brooklyn waterfront. Tonight a container leaves a yard nobody inventories. Inside is a ledger that doesn't exist. Cash movements, shell companies, payments to the PR firm that paid to smear you. It's Rocco's insurance policy. If we put that ledger in Rinaldi's hands, the city will have to choose daylight. We, she said softly, because the words still made the room warmer. He met her eyes. Not because I'm brave, because I'm tired of a city where children learn which doors to fear. I promised you a playground with a lock that turns from the inside. We can't build it on rot. She nodded once. Then we get the ledger. Not we, Emma. He shook his head. You meet Rinaldi at Pier 34 with Marina at 9. I go to the yard. If Rocco sees you, he'll move the war to your front steps. You can't go alone. I won't, he said. And for the first time she heard a shadow of something like fond exasperation in his voice. I'll take men whose names don't belong in your phone. She reached for his sleeve and stopped, fingers hovering, the way the first touch hovers to see if the world will allow it. Come back, she said. I will. You promised that last night. I'm promising it better now. He was already moving when she said, Lorenzo. He looked back. I love you, she said, and the truth left her like breath after surfacing. He drank the words in, steady and stunned and grateful all at once. Stay where walls know their work, he said. And hold me to that after. By night the waterfront had dressed itself in cold. Cranes stood like tall bones against a bruised sky. Floodlights carved clean islands out of dark. The yard's gate yawned for a truck that never arrived. Lorenzo moved like a man who had memorized the angles. Shadow against shadow, slip between cones of light, stop when radios crackled. 2 men paced to his left, 2 to his right, not close enough to make a target, not far enough to become mistakes. He signaled once. A chain-link door bit back a small complaint. They slid inside. The container was where the map said it would be, red, dented, anonymous like all the others trying not to be noticed. Inside, the smell of oil and ocean. On a shelf, a gray box with a combination lock and the quiet arrogance of something that believes it will not be opened by anyone still breathing. He spun the dial. Childhood rose like a bruise. His uncle's office. A safe with this exact model. A birthday that wasn't his. Click. The box surrendered. Ledger. Not a real book. An encrypted drive shaped like one. He slipped it into an inner pocket, signaled out, and turned to go. Not leaving so fast, are you? A voice asked from the dark, soft as old threat. Rocco stepped from behind a stack of pallets, coat immaculate, hair steel, eyes a color that didn't care. 2 men bracketed him. 3 more appeared where you wouldn't have bet they could stand. Nephew, Rocco said, you've developed a taste for theater. You taught me the blocking, Lorenzo answered. I'm just cutting the second act. Rocco smiled without changing his eyes. Bringing the girl into it was ungentlemanly. You smeared a woman who builds parks, Lorenzo said. Speak carefully. Ah, Rocco sighed, mock regretful. Love, a liability that likes to dress as courage. Men shifted, metal sighed. The river threw cold at their faces as if eager to see what men would do in its name. I never wanted your job, Lorenzo said. Only your permission to build something you couldn't break. And I never wanted a nephew who counted chairs instead of bodies, Rocco replied. We make what we are. That's why I'm done being what you are. Rocco tilted his head. Give me the book. No. So you choose faith, Rocco said. In cops, in news, in children with bottle caps. In Emma, Lorenzo said, and the name landed like a flag. The first man moved, quick, a lunge with something that could have been a lesson. Lorenzo pivoted, force measured, the kind of economy that makes violence look almost like grace. The man hit steel, Another stepped in, then two at once. Not a brawl. A choreography of restraint and intent. Shouts, a crack. Boots on sheet metal like drum beats. Somewhere a floodlight popped and spilled a little night. "Enough!" Rocco snapped, voice slicing the air. He held up a palm and the yard obeyed because old habits don't die when they're fed. "Let the boy take his toy," he said. "He'll learn what it costs to bring sunlight into a room that was built for dusk." "You sound nostalgic," Lorenzo said, breathing hard but steady. "I am," Rocco replied pleasantly. "For a city that told boys like you the truth about love. It is a beautiful way to get killed." Lorenzo didn't answer. He backed toward the gate without turning his back, men flanking him like thoughts he had decided to keep. When he cleared the mouth of the yard, the river air found his lungs again and didn't burn as much. He didn't see the call that went out behind him. He felt it, the pivot, the counter. Old hands moving pieces on a board he had left too soon. He ran anyway. Pier 34 was a geometry of ropes and quiet. Emma waited with Marina on the downwind side of a shed that had remembered a better paint job. Marina's hands shook inside her coat pockets. "I'm sorry I got scared," she said. "You were brave," Emma answered. "Brave is what people call you when they want to bless you and get out of the way," Marina muttered. "I brought the original email header. Chain of custody will like it better than screenshots." Footsteps approached. Detective Rinaldi emerged from the fog with a face that had decided 6 coffees was enough. "We're clean?" he asked, meaning tails, cameras, angels. "For the next 5 minutes," Marina said. Rinaldi took the envelope, checked the contents, nodded once. "This sings in court and dances on TV. Where's your complicated man?" "He's—" Emma began when her phone buzzed. A single word lit the screen. "Run." Rinaldi's head snapped up. "Now?" Emma lifted the phone for him to see. His mouth flattened. "He's drawing heat to himself. What do we do?" "We do not follow a man who lures wolves," Rinaldi said, and slipped the envelope into an inside pocket that looked like it had never lost anything. "We go to the only place an old map can't see." "Where?" "A judge who hates bullies more than he hates paperwork." They moved as one. Marina peeled off at the corner with a prayer in Spanish. Emma and Rinaldi slid into an old sedan that didn't apologize for its stains. Sirens bloomed 2 blocks south like dangerous flowers. Rinaldi turned north. "You trust him?" the detective asked, not looking. "Yes," Emma said. "Good. Then when this goes sideways, remember I asked." They reached a courthouse that had given up on pretending to be pretty. Rinaldi used a door that pretended it was locked. A clerk blinked at them. A bailiff took off his reading glasses as if justice were small print. Judge Barone looked up from a stack of paper with a grunt that also meant come in. He studied Rinaldi, then Emma. "I don't do midnight favors." Rinaldi set the envelope on the desk and removed 1 page. The lion cufflink winked up from a still photograph like a bad joke. "You do this one," he said, "because you like schools with working playgrounds." The judge stared, read, turned a page, swore softly, the kind of sacrilege that makes saints tolerate you. "Who else has this?" "No one friendly," Rinaldi said. "Yet." Barone's gaze moved to Emma. "You the girl they're crucifying on Channel 7? "I'm the woman who signed the actual plan," she said. A beat. Then Barone nodded once, the night moving. He scribbled, stamped, called a clerk without looking. "TRO on contact restrictions," he said. "Order for production on the shell firm. Warrant for seizure tied to the PR invoice accounts. And give me a protective for Marina under seal. Meanwhile, detective, go get me a ledger I can swear at." Rinaldi took the papers, relief disguised as routine. Working on it, Barone pointed his pen at Emma. "You, don't talk to the press. Don't blink on camera. When they ask if you love him, say, 'I love this city enough to fix a broken block.'" "And if they ask again?" Emma said. "Say it again," Barone replied, "until they're bored of decency." They were halfway down the courthouse steps when the city changed its mind a second time. A text hit all 3 phones at once, from a number that belonged to nobody and everyone. A photo. The waterfront yard gates, men running. A caption. Sunrise is bad for business. Rinaldi's mouth went thin. He found it, he said. Or it found him. Go, Emma said. I'm not your driver, he snapped, then softened. Get in. They reached the yard to find nothing and too much of it. Lights swinging, a smear of shoe on a rust bite, the shadow of a vehicle having been where it no longer was. A long way off, sirens told their version of events. Where would he go? Emma asked. Where a map doesn't tell him to, Rinaldi said, scanning. He turned to her. You want to help him? Help me make the ledger sing before sunrise. They sang it. Through systems a lesser man would have pampered. Across desks that had forgotten how to hold this much urgency. Into the hands of a journalist who had once told the truth so hard she lost a job for it and had not changed her religion since. By late afternoon, the city began to feel the shift. Small first, like a tide deciding. At 5, City Watch blinked. At 6, the councilwoman's smile cracked. At 7, the watchdog account tried to roar and coughed up smoke. At 7:30, Judge Barone's stamped orders landed like coins on a table you weren't invited to. The PR firm's door learned handcuffs. The aide's apartment learned what a warrant sounds like. At 8, a chopper shot from a news station caught 3 men in suits climbing into cars they hadn't wanted seen. A scrolling caption used the word indictment as if relearning it. At 8:30, Emma's phone rang. She knew the rhythm before it fully formed. I'm at the river, Lorenzo said, voice wind-scuffed. It's done. Come to me, she said, and the plea fell between them with all the dignity love can have when it refuses to kneel. Pier 17, he said. 15 minutes. If I'm not there, you'll be there, she said, and hung up so neither of them could argue with the faith. She told Rinaldi with her eyes. He grunted the kind of permission men give when they've decided to be on the right side of a story. If I ask where you're going, he said, you'll tell me you forgot. If you ask, she said, I'll tell you I remembered something more important. Fine, he said. Tell him I'm keeping the sandwich tally. She ran. The city felt new and old at once, like a song someone remixed with the original voice intact. At Pier 17, the wind came off the water with both hands. The boards creaked under her steps in exactly the places they always had. Tourists had fled the hour to the safety of dinner. The skyline glowed like a confession that didn't mind being heard. He stepped from shadow the way men do when they're done being haunted by it. No sirens chased him. No footsteps hurried behind. Just a man, alive, equal parts ash and miracle. They stopped an arm's length apart, breathing each other in like weather that finally matched the season. You came back, she said. I promised better, he answered. He reached for her and then didn't, because consent is the most beautiful tradition a city can learn. She closed the space for him, hands on his face, thumbs finding the lines that worry had carved and hope would soften. He bent his forehead to hers like a prayer said in the language both of them understood. Tell me, she whispered, eyes closed against tears that asked permission. Tell me it's over. It's beginning, he said, smiling into the words, and kissed her. The kind of kiss that plants a flag without claiming land, that tells a future where to build. Behind them, the city kept being a city. Horns, voices, a ferry shrugging toward the other side. Around them, something quiet and private took root in public and didn't apologize. They broke only when breath insisted. He tucked her against him, one hand at the back of her neck, the other around the promise of the life they had almost let the day steal. I love you too, he said simply, as if he had been waiting to put the words where they belonged. Since the elevator, since the basement, since the moment you made a room full of men reconsider what courage sounds like. She laughed, wet and bright, and since I said something stupid in a restaurant. He kissed her hair, especially then. Rinaldi arrived 10 minutes later, unhurried, chewing a mint like a man who'd run out of cigarettes 10 years ago and decided to live anyway. He watched them with the careful disinterest of a guardian who will be sentimental when no one's looking. Ledger sang, he said. Judge is writing music. Your uncle will learn to waltz with a subpoena. Don't be elegant, Lorenzo said dryly. It makes me itch. Rinaldi's gaze softened a fraction on Emma. Ethics closed the preliminary. No conflict. The memo's a fake with fingerprints you can frame. He flicked his eyes back to Lorenzo. Tomorrow you're going to sit for a statement that becomes a story. Use small words. No poetry. He can't help himself, Emma said. That true? Regrettably, Lorenzo answered, smiling in a way that made Rinaldi's mouth twitch. Good, the detective said.
This city could use a little poetry that pays its bills. He left them to the wind and the water. Months later, summer bent the light gold, and the Anchorage playground opened like a small, bright mouth laughing. The tire swing squealed in a language children understand. A mural watched from the rec center wall. A saint with laugh lines and a crown made of bottle caps, painted by a boy who once drew borders on his palms and now drew skylines. Emma stood with a clipboard she didn't need, hair up, dress simple, eyes elastic with every emotion the day demanded. Parents shook her hand the way people shake the hand of the person who remembered their names. A teacher cried and pretended it was sunscreen. The councilwoman appeared without cameras and left a check she didn't ask to photograph. Marina took photos on a disposable camera and promised to mail them. Julia reorganized volunteers like a general in lipstick. Olivia ran crowd control with a megaphone and then hid behind a lemonade table when a news van tried to make her talk. Rinaldi leaned on a fence post, tie off, sleeves rolled, looking like a man whose city had finally done one right thing in front of him. Judge Barone showed up, glared at the hot dogs, ate two, and told a kid if he broke an arm there was a statute for that. And near the gate, Lorenzo stood in a charcoal suit with no tie, and a smile that had learned humility. Some men came to shake his hand. Some watched to see who did. He did not hurry any of it. He watched the first swing start and didn't blink. Emma crossed to him. Their hands found each other like a reflex the body learns faster than the mind. You kept your promise, she said. We kept it, he corrected. And Rinaldi, and a judge with decent taste in saints, and a woman who makes copies when she shouldn't. She glanced at the mural. Do you think he'd like this? She asked, meaning the boy he'd been, meaning the map on his palm. He'd stand at the edge and pretend he didn't, Lorenzo said. Then he'd stay until the lights came on. They watched as a kid with two big sneakers let go of a swing at the peak and landed with a whoop, knees dusty, pride clean. The squeal of the chains was the only siren this block needed. Marry me, Lorenzo said, not as a performance, not as a power trick, but as a man who had learned the ordinary is holy. Emma's laugh came out as a sob hid inside it. That's your small words for the statement? He swallowed, eyes bright. I'll make the rest smaller if you need. He slid a plain ring from his pocket. No diamonds, no theater, just a circle that knew its job. I don't want the city to be someone I fight. I want to be the man who builds it with you. Yes, she said, as if the answer had been living under her tongue, waiting for the light. Yes. Applause rose and rippled because joy is a contagion this neighborhood had been deprived of and now refused to quarantine. Olivia screamed. Julia cried into a clipboard. Rinaldi pretended to check his watch and wiped an eye with his cuff. Lorenzo slid the ring on. It fit like memory. He kissed her once, soft, grateful, public and private at the same time, and the playground hollered like it had been consulted. The saint on the wall watched, beatific and tired and laughing. Later, when the sun pulled long shadows from the swing set and the grills cooled, they walked the perimeter together, fingers laced. A kid ran past with a paper crown. Somewhere a parent yelled 5 more minutes and meant forever. Do you ever think about that first night? Emma asked. Every time I pay a bill, he said. She elbowed him. Not the check. The moment you told the truth and didn't die of it, he said. The moment I remembered a city can change its mind. She leaned into him. It did today. It will again, he said, looking at the kids like a weather report he believed. When it forgets, we'll remind it. They reached the gate. He paused, looked back at what they had made out of a place men once rented out to fear. Home, he said. Home.
she echoed. And the river, patient and bright, carried the sound away like a blessing that knew where it was going. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.